Hello, welcome. I am artist Lisa Christensen, and I believe that everyone can watercolor, and creativity is a process, so enjoy the journey. I also believe that your creativity expands the more you share it with others, so give kindness and have joy. That is why I created the Watercolor Card Facebook group with over 52,000 members, and this video I'm sharing how I'm using stamps in my Easter cards. So I start with foiling my foilets from Tailored Expressions. They are Easter sentiments, and I'm just using gold foil, using my mink. I cut the foil down to size to get the foil perfect and for the sentiments to be perfect. A pro tip that I have is to set your mink on 3 when you're using heavier cardstock, and always measure your foil because you don't have to waste a whole bunch of foil. Just measure what you think you need and then put it on your paper and foil, and you'll be in good shape. Next, I am using a beautiful floral stamp from Tailored Expressions, and I'm going to ink that stamp. It's called Fancy Florals with raspberry sherbet, and I just want a really simple floral motif on the foiling panels, and so that fancy floral stamp works perfectly for this, and I don't really have to do a whole lot. I just have to stamp and it really works. The foil really kind of adds to it, and so I'm very grateful for this because I have to make about 30 Easter cards this season. When I was designing and thinking how to make 30 Easter cards, I needed a couple cards that were really simple but yet elegant that will work for Easter cards. About 20 of them are going to go to nursing homes for members of our church that are not able to make it to church services. So I think they will really enjoy something simple like that. And now I'm just going to take some of that raspberry sorbet ink, and I'm just going to blend kind of into the flowers. It's a super easy technique. It's just blending the ink on top of the cardstock just to give it a pastel look. I feel like Easter you can get away with having just a simple pastel look because the stamp and the sentiments really do all the work. You're just adding a little bit more of that what I call environmental atmospheric look to it. So you'll see me just blend. I'm double speeding this, so I'm not really taking my time. I'm just kind of blending into wherever I think the ink needs to be blended into. Another pro tip that I would have is that it is perfectly acceptable to use the same ink that you stamped to blend as well. I do that all the time to get a monochromatic look to it, and it really does work well. Now if you wanted your corners to be darker, you could use a darker pink, but this raspberry or the pink champagne actually works really well for this. Alright, now I'm using just a simple like decal edged die cut from Tailored Expressions, and I'm going to cut those two together, and then my card is pretty much ready. I'm just going to glue the larger part of it together, and then I'm going to foam mount the actual sentiment part that's stamped, the front panel, to the brown. And I really like the craft cardstock with this pink. It really just looks beautiful. It reminds me of like almost like a, I don't know, just a beautiful wedding announcement or something. But there you go. I will be busy for the next couple hours, and there's the finished card for that. It was really easy and so fun to make. On to the next one is He Is Risen by Blue Night Stamps. I wanted to do a watercolor motif. That's what I'm known for, and I figured I could probably stamp 15 of them. What I'm doing is I'm adding a little bit of tape runner to the Misti because I can't use a magnet, and that will hold the watercolor paper down so I can get a good impression. The red rubber is wonderful. I love the red rubber, but the watercolor paper is 140-pound card press, cold press paper, and that does not take the ink as well. So I have to ink it twice. Like there's one impression, and that impression's not terrible, but I wanted it to be darker. So I have 2 rounds of dark, and you can see that the second impression really makes all the difference. And I will do that for 10 more times. Another pro tip that I have while I am inking is that if you did not want to use cold press paper, you can always use mixed media paper. Mixed media paper doesn't have as much tooth because it's only usually 90 pounds instead of 140 like the Canson watercolor paper that I love to use. However, it doesn't do washes as well, whereas the 140-pound paper can take a good wet wash. I am now on to the Tailored Expressions sentiments that I wanted to use, and I'm going to use 3 different types, and I'm going to just kind of typeset them wherever I think the panel is going to go. So in my mind, I'm thinking I will paint maybe some florals or maybe a landscape, and you'll see that I will do one vertical and another couple horizontal, and that's because I wanted a little bit of variety. And so what I plan on doing with these Easter sentiments is make some beautiful cards that have my artwork showcased onto them. And I do this all the time with birthday cards. This is not a new thing for me. I will often stamp lots of different sentiments on, and you'll see me clean my stamp up and then go into a different sentiment. And this time I actually do a landscape because I wanted to do like more of a landscape or like a landscape motif. And so I'm going to just add another Easter like sentiment, but landscape. A pro tip that I have is that I will often stamp sentiments onto watercolor paper and then watercolor. And sometimes it's organic and almost like abstract, or sometimes it's intuitive watercolor. I just have a lot of fun, and there's a new trend happening called reverse adult coloring. And so basically it's, instead of having like lines to color in, you just make your own motif. And so that's what I'm doing here, but instead of buying it, I'm creating it myself, which is so fun. Now this one, I wanted to kind of create like a wreath around the sentiment, so I thought I would start with the sentiment first and then paint the wreath, which you'll see me actually demo how Okay, so moving on to the He Has Risen card. I'm using Artistro Watercolor for this, and I'll be using a lot of brights and a little bit of greens. For this one, I'm using like the cad yellow and some orange and some metallic watercolor. I feel like metallic watercolor is very indicative to Easter and Christmas. But I'm just wetting the paper down, and I'm going to get started in just a little bit, but I do enjoy spending some time just wetting the paper down so I know that my watercolor paper is ready for watercolor to be mixed on. And I like to mix watercolor on the paper. I think it gives a nice look. Here's the cad yellow. I'm going straight where I think the sun should be, and I'm just getting that kind of started. This stamp does most of the work, so I really am just putting on a wash. And it's that simple. Yep. And then you'll see the greens for the trail and like the hill. And I wanted it to be, I'm toning down the green a little bit, and I'm adding some darker green. This next panel that I'm doing, because I have about 10 of these panels that I'm painting, I thought, well, now's the time to try and play. So I'm using like a darker blue, like a Prussian blue or an indigo blue, and then I'm adding some green to it just to give the hill a further distance away look. And then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to add yellow to that Prussian blue, and it's just going to mute it. That the yellow is called yellow ochre. So any yellow ochre would work with this and I really like how that turned out. I'm letting it dry. Once it's dry, I go back in and I can actually work on my sunrise, or my sunrise. And so I'm using a beautiful New Gamboge yellow just to add some of that warmth into the trail, especially once I get the sun going. It's going to need some of that warmth in the trail. And I feel like this is much more indicative than the other green that I used. So I'm grateful that I kind of decided to change it up a bit. And then this is cadmium red, and I'm just going in, almost going to use the whole panel because I want it to look cohesive. And now I'm going to use that cadmium yellow and get that really bright yellow happening, and that's going to really kind of just make the card really work pretty. And there we go. We are pretty much done. I'm just adding a little bit more yellow into it so it's nice and vibrant. Now finishing up this card, I decided to do like an orange yellow look to it, and you'll see me like clean off my brush a lot because I really like to have a clean brush when I'm painting. And that's looking good. Now we got to work on the trail. I'm taking yellow ochre and I'm just doing another wash on the trail, trying to get that green to be a different color. So the yellow ochre wasn't quite doing what I needed it to do, so I decided to go with an olive green. Alright, for the third one, I'm going to just paint some green leaves. My thoughts were they could be like big palm fronds or something green and botanically like motif like. They're not perfect, they are just little leaves that I thought would be fun to paint around the whole card panel, and so that's what I'm doing. And right now I'm just playing with the colors on my brush. I'm using shape. I'm almost just having fun. I'm playing around. And I think that's the best thing about watercolor for me, is that playfulness that I can really get. And so there's the first layer. I will go back and do 2 more layers just to get a beautiful design, but that's the first base layer. For the second layer, I'm going to use that olive green that I just love so much right now, and I'm just going to layer it on top of those greens. I'm really just playing with the brush shape because I know that my darker lines are going to be the ones that actually like dictates the shapes. And so right now I'm just having fun layering pigment on. I'm doing like light pressure, thick pressure, and then light pressure again when I'm making my leaves. And so there is a little bit of a learning curve to it, but I know that you can, and you'll see me using a shorter, smaller brush. And right now I'm just adding some purple and then some of that mauve color just to give, I just want some berries or some, I don't know, maybe they're olives. I'm thinking olives just because of the symbolicness of it, but they can be berries or whatever. It just adds some interest. And of course I do my 3 little berries, my little Mickey Mouse berries, but they're fun and they don't have to all be 3. I probably could have done different shapes, but I just wanted to make sure that they were there just to add a little bit of interest to it. And now I'm going to go in with a thicker pigment, and I'm just adding some leaf veins really to where the existing bit, and I'll do this 2 more times with different greens. So this is just the first real layer that I'm doing, and I'm using a very light touch, and there's no, I just use a very light touch, and I use my wrist and almost just like as a flick. And now I'm going into a darker green, that same green Viridian that I used, and then I'm adding a little bit of that purple that's already on my palette just to give it some definition. And again, This is very loose. It's supposed to be just fun and just lovely. And I don't worry. I know that I'm off spatially, but I will actually go to the die cutter and cut out this panel, so then it really doesn't matter. And I'm just adding some interest to it. So that's my third layer. Once I feel like that's pretty good, I go in and I'm just gonna like soften up the lines around where the leaves start, because I don't really want that. And then I'm just adding a little bit of pigment that's already on the palette into the wreath, so it's just all kind of a lighter tone. And then I'm going to take my metallic and I'm going to splatter. I just use a little bit of splatter all around, and that just gives it a nice look to it. You by all means do not need a splatter, but I love splatter on watercolor cards, especially on cards like that. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add just a little bit more metallics on the leaves, just wherever I feel like it. There's no right way or wrong way. It's just wherever I feel like there needs to be a little bit of metallic, that's where I'm putting it. And I'm calling that done. To finish up this floral motif, I just die cut the watercolor panel with the deckled edge die, and then I mounted it onto purple printed cardstock. Well, that wraps up my Easter cards. I can't wait to send these out to my people and my friends. I'm so excited. If you found this video to be at all inspiring, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. I produce content every Thursday at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time. Happy inking and share some kindness along the way.